Chapter 7. The Dying Forest. Alan walked through the forest. He practiced his Taisabaki footwork as he moved, ducking, spinning, dashing, avoiding vines and branches, moving around trees. It was like a dance. He became entranced by the movements and closed his eyes. He felt the forest around him. He felt like flowing water. He felt his life energy circulating around his body. Alan heard a branch crack above. He rolled out of its way, then rose to his feet as it crashed down behind him. Opening his eyes, he took a deep breath to center himself. There were sounds of shrieking in the distance, then an explosion. Alan was confused. It was not a sound he usually heard in the living forest. He moved toward the sound as it grew louder. Coming to the edge of a cliff face, he looked down below to see three small figures were running from a large group of shrieking creatures moving quickly below. To his left was a small gorge leading up the mountain, which then curved to the right and connected to the pathway leading up the same direction. A dozen creatures followed behind the three figures. Dozens more veered right. The mountain on the right of the gorge continued upward in a clear path. At Alan's vantage point, he could see the creatures were about to cut them off in a pincer.
No! Not that way!
Alan tried to call out to them, but he was too far to be heard.
So there you are.
Den said as he jumped down next to Alan.
What are these people up to? Being this far into the forest?
They're in trouble. We should help them.
Den looked over the cliff.
They certainly have got themselves into a pickle.
Den remarked, then turned to face Alan.
Well, what are you waiting for?
Den said, pointing downhill. Kimber, Camdar, and Law came to a cliff face. "This way," Law shouted, following alongside the cliff wall.
We'll find a way up here.
Camdar said as they moved upward through the rocky pass. They slowed, having to climb over large boulders and thick tree roots. The ghouls behind them gaining ground, shrieking and groaning. They crawled on all fours over the obstacles easily, digging their sharp, gnarled fingers into the rubble. "Against the wall," Law said as he slammed his fists together. Several large boulders came loose on the cliff face, rolling downhill toward the ghouls. Most of them moved out of the way, but a couple weren't looking where they were going and got caught, exploding into a bloody mess. Bone shards flew out in every direction, collecting a few more ghouls in the process. They made it to the right-hand turn in the gorge. They could see the top of the hill not far ahead of them. When a dozen ghouls crested the hill, they stopped in their tracks. A dozen more came up behind them.
What do we do?
"We've no choice now. We have to stand our ground." They stood back to the wall and surrounded as the ghouls advanced closer.
Any chance for more of that lightning?
Camdar suggested. "The sky is blocked by the canopy of trees, and even so, I can't cast it when they're this close to us." Kimber slammed her fists together.
Follow my lead.
She began to fade from sight like fading into murky water. Camdar and Law followed suit. The ghouls came closer. They moved silently while the ghouls reached out with long, gnarled hands. Listening out for any sign of movement, they swiped at the air trying to find them. Camdar stepped back to narrowly avoid a bony, rotted hand and stepped on a stick with a crack. Noise drew the attention of the ghouls and five of them leaped toward Camdar's location. He dropped the veil and the wind picked up around him. He extended his arms out at the last minute and the ghouls were blasted away by a powerful gust of wind. They shrieked and now all the ghouls were focused on him.
Don't worry about me. I'll be the bait. I'll take as many of them as I can. Just make your way out of here.
Kimber opened her mouth to object, but Law extended a hand and muted her voice with magic.
No, Father, please!
She mouthed, muted as the ghouls moved on Camdar. He slammed his fists together and they glowed with a bright light. He put his hand to his elbow and funneled his life force into the light. The gorge filled with blinding brightness. The ghouls shielded their eyes, unable to look into the light. Law turned and pulled Kimber away and up the gorge. As the light faded, Camdar dropped to a knee, having exhausted his life force. The ghouls all shrieked at him in unison and moved toward him. They approached him on all sides as he drew the knife from his belt. An old man in tan clothes with long braided brown hair swung down on a vine, kicking a ghoul as he passed. A younger man wearing the same outfit with long braided blonde hair did the same on the other side. The vines tangled together as they swung from opposite directions and pulled him around in a circle. They kicked at the ghouls as they swung around in tighter and tighter circles, kicking one after another as they swung around Camdar. They landed on either side of him, grabbing him under the arms while holding the twisted vines. They ran downhill, baiting the ghouls to chase after them. They pulled on the twisted vines, and they acted like a spring, swinging them back the other way. They launched themselves over a large group of ghouls, giving them an opening to start sprinting up the hill. Law and Kimber dropped their veils and moved to intercept them. They slammed their fists together and placed a hand on their elbows. They extended the hand closest to each other and stood back to back, arms extended toward the ghouls. Waves of heat started to coalesce into their palms, and a giant fireball exploded to life in front of them. They aimed up at the ledge of the gorge and let it go. The fireball exploded into the cliff face, sending rock down to bury the ghouls with fallen stone and earth. The five of them fell to the ground, covering their heads, hoping not to be crushed. Then all was silent. As the dust settled, they slowly got up and observed the destruction. Den turned away in disgust.
This is what happens when you play with chaos magic,
He said, then walked up the path back toward the temple.
Thank you.
Kimber called after him. Den just waved a hand and kept walking. Then she turned to Aelin and hugged him tightly.
Thank you. You saved my father.
Aelin patted her on the back.
You're welcome?
Thank you, stranger. I didn't think we'd see anybody this deep in the living forest. I'm so glad you were here.
Camdar shook Aelin's hand. Law stepped up to Aelin with a bushy brow cocked and looked him in the eye. Aelin took a step back nervously. It can't be. You look just like him. What's your name, boy? Law questioned.
It's Aelin.
Aelin said, confused. Law bonked him on the head. Your full name, Law said impatiently. Aelin rubbed his head and responded.
Aelin Allheart.
He grumbled, and Law smiled. I knew it. You're the spitting image of Aram. Aelin looked surprised by the old man's words.
You know the stories of Aram and Casta Pendragon?
You could say that. I was the one who wrote most of them down, Law said, looking at him in hopes that he'd catch on. Aelin looked over the old man. His colorful silk robe, pointed hat, and long beard.
You look just like Casta Pendragon from the stories.
He is Casta Pendragon.
Kimber said, putting a hand on Aelin's shoulder. Aelin's eyes grew wide.
What? How? You died 500 years ago.
Not quite.
We found him in a sealed cave in the Valley of Muse.
Does that mean Aram is alive too?
Law looked to the ground. Aram didn't survive the Cataclysm.
Oh.
Who's your grumpy old friend?
Camdar asked as Den crested the hill.
That's Master Den. He's an Aikitai master from the temple, probably the last one living. The vines were his plan.
I see. I have some questions for Master Den. May we join you? But Aelin was distracted looking at Kimber. He'd never seen a girl so beautiful or so close to his own age. She was talking to Camdar and smiling, then noticed Aelin staring and looked away.
Of course. We've never had visitors, so it'll be nice to have people come by.
Camdar noticed Aelin's lingering eyes and stepped between him and Kimber.
I'm Camdar Kindheart. This is my daughter, Kimber. Thank you again for helping us.
If you follow me, I'll show you the path to the temple. It's best not to linger long in the living forest, else you'll end up trapped, or buried, or strangled, or eaten, or poisoned, or put in a pot and boiled by goblins. It's a dangerous place. Just Just try to stay close.
Kimber took that as an invitation and grabbed Aelin by the arm as they made their way up the hill. Camdar and Lore looked at each other and groaned. Ugh. A raven watched as they crested the hill from a high perch, then puffed into black smoke.
I apologize for Master Den. The precepts of Aikitai are very strict on the use of chaos magic. It goes against everything Aikitai stands for. We avoid chaos in order to live in harmony with the world.
Aelin explained while walking them down the trail. I can attest to the damage chaos magic can inflict upon the world. His views aren't without merit.
I imagine the one who destroyed the world would have a first-hand knowledge of such things. I am interested to hear your story.
Lore coughed and cleared his throat abjectly. Kimber interrupted him.
That's a common misconception. Master Pendragon wasn't the one who broke the world. He was fighting against Lord Guldamir. He was the one who destroyed the new statues and released all that chaos magic into the world at once.
Again, not entirely true. The fact is, we both had a hand in destroying them. Although, it wasn't entirely my fault that the second statue was destroyed. The third was shattered in the ensuing explosion of energy, and its power has been lost ever since. That's the reason why we came to the forest, to look for it. I need to ask Master Den if he has any idea where the missing power might be.
And why are you looking for this missing power?
Guldamir is searching for it. He already possesses one part of the power. If he gains more, he will become nigh unstoppable. They came to a clearing with a large vine bridge over to the temple and began to cross.
This place is beautiful.
Kimber exclaimed wide-eyed.
The Aikitai have been tending to the temple for hundreds of years. It used to be a place of pilgrimage before the church banned travel here.
You live here?
Master Den brought me here a few years ago and started training me in the ways of the Aikitai. Before that, I was living in the living forest alone and was almost goblin food.
So, why were you living here alone?
That's enough questions, Kimber.
Camdar interrupted. Kimber had a kind heart, as her namesake suggested, but she was a curious type, and as such, she lacked a certain social etiquette at times. Camdar knew that all too well. They neared the temple. Den stood arms folded at the end of the vine bridge.
Those who practice chaos magic are not permitted on temple grounds.
He shouted back at them. It is imperative that I speak with you, Master Den, for the fate of all Thalarans is at stake. Lore bowed with his response. Den appreciated the etiquette and gave a slight bow in return.
Nevertheless, you cannot enter. Turn back.
Let me handle this.
Aelin put a hand on Lore's back.
Master, I know magic users invite chaos, but would it be enough to have them vow not to use chaos magic while they are here? You should listen to what they have to say.
The use of chaos magic is against the precepts of Aikitai. Chaos invokes destruction and hardship.
I know, but they're pilgrims. Didn't you say the temple used to have many of that kind?
Den thought about Aelin's words.
All right, Aelin, but while they are here, you will watch them closely. Any use of chaos magic, and they will be expelled from the temple grounds.
Den agreed, walking back to the temple. Aelin waved over his new friends.
The use of chaos magic is forbidden here. Please refrain from using it while on temple grounds.
He asked politely as they crossed the vine bridge.
Master Den, please meet Lord Casta Pendragon, and this is Kimber and Camdar Kindheart.
They all bowed as they passed Den. Aelin showed them to the caves in the back of the temple, to some spare rooms. They lowered their packs and got comfortable. It felt like forever since they actually had time to rest and recover. Later on, Den was training Aelin at the water flumes. Aelin closed his eyes and his life energy flowed. He could feel the water as it fell around him, almost in slow motion. Den moved the flumes around, and Aelin moved between the waterspouts using the Taisabaki footwork he had been practicing.
Well done, Aelin.
Aelin opened his eyes, took a deep breath in, and bowed.
It seems you finally got the hang of Taisabaki.
Aelin noticed Kimber, Camdar, and Law watching nearby and became nervous. Den saw his apprehension and put a hand on his shoulder, whispering in his ear.
Know your strength, Aelin. Let it be your foundation. Fear plays on weakness. Conquer your fear, and you conquer your weakness.
Aelin bowed as Den patted him on the shoulder.
Impressive.
Kimber said, smiling as Aelin approached.
I am nothing compared to Master Dan, but I'm getting better.
I've been learning from Master Pendragon, so I know what it's like to compare yourself to someone whose skills far outshine your own.
You both have big shoes to follow.
Den walked over to Law.
Master Pendragon.
Law bowed his head slightly while lighting a long pipe. Den got a serious look on his face.
It can't be you. You died hundreds of years ago.
Den assumed his fighting stance.
Aelin, he is risen.
Law felt a sudden pressure from the man not felt moments earlier. Like if he moved the wrong way, he would die. Law jumped back and slammed his fist together, preparing himself. Kimber ran between them.
Hold on. Let us explain,
She said, facing Den. He lowered his stance and waited. Kimber pulled out Law's tome.
This book was originally written by Lawcaster Pendragon centuries ago. It still contained his magic. He used it to ask us to free him from his time prison at the Valley of News. He's been stuck there since the Cataclysm over 500 years ago.
Law released the seal, letting his hands drop. It seems I have some explaining to do. The group sat on the stone ground of the temple, listening to his story.
So, you were trapped in there for 500 years. But for you, it wasn't that long?
Indeed, the passage of time was far faster for me than it was for the outside world.
It is truly amazing that you managed to stay sane trapped in an empty cave for that long.
When one has magic to pass the time, one is rarely bored, Law said, smiling wryly. I have a theory that these forests are able to grow due to a magic catalyst.
The forest is a force of nature.
I know, it might seem so to you, but before the Cataclysm, the land was covered in forests, none of which ever grew this tall or this fast. I believe the missing power may be the catalyst for its growth. The distant sound of clanging armor emitted from the other side of the vine bridge.
Shh, do you hear that?
Den and Aelin stood up. The noise got louder, and the forest darker as the sound drew closer. Black miasma started pouring over the cliff ledge on the other side of the vine bridge. Vegetation began to rot and fall away. The vine bridge collapsed as Guldamir appeared out of the haze. Behind him, 5 hooded men in robes on horseback rode out of the smoke on black horses, followed by lines of soldiers armored and ready for battle.
Found you.
Guldamir said from the other side of the gorge.
I'll be taking my power now, Pendragon.
Guldamir said, clasping his hands together in prayer. The horses of the hooded riders turned to smoke as they were consumed, surrounding the riders in black miasma. They shot off over the gorge at speed toward the temple and crashed on the other side into 5 plumes of black smoke. Kimber, Aelin, Law, Den, and Camdar all stood and faced them.
Do not dare use chaos magic on these grounds.
Guldamir cackled deeply as his troops brought him a seat to sit and enjoy the show. The first hooded figure in front of Kimber removed his hood, revealing a scarred face, and put on his wide-brimmed hat.
I am Silent Silas, Chief Interrogator to my lord Guldamir.
he said with a tip of his hat. Aelin looked at him. Fear and anger welled up inside of him.
You killed my father, you bastard!
Aelin was ready to charge at him then and there, but Den held him back. Silas smiled wickedly.
You remember me, but I don't remember you.
An exceptionally large figure in front of Aelin dropped his hooded cloak, revealing a muscular chest in a leather vest and legs the size of tree trunks.
Hiram Halfborn.
Aelin said softly as the memory of his mother and brother being drowned struck fear into him. Grief gripped his heart, and all he could do was stare at the man in disbelief. Dent stepped in front of Aelin, eyeing down the large man.
I've come to finish what I started, All Heart.
The third hooded figure in front of Lore removed his hood, revealing a man in a red velvet suit.
I am Stefan Stratomancer, Master Strategist to my Lord Guldamir.
He said, taking a short bow, then pulled out an ominous-looking box and placed it on the ground at his feet. The fourth hooded figure in front of Den didn't remove his hood. Instead, he took out a jagged ceremonial dagger and revealed his bare arm. It was skinny and covered in scar tissue. With a throaty growl, he said,
I am Charon. I am head acolyte of the Church of the God-Feared. Behold.
Den looked at him warily, not sure what to make of him. The hooded figure in front of Kandar removed his hooded cloak, revealing a creature who looked to be the result of several different people sewn together. He had a spear and shield.
I am Petricus Postmortus, Field Commander to my Lord Guldamir's vanguard forces. Now that we have been formally introduced, the terms of engagement. You will lay down whatever arms you may be carrying and surrender yourselves to our Lord.
Lore slammed his fists together. It doesn't seem like they're going to give us much of a choice. Lore extended his arm and a fireball burst into life. He fired straight ahead at Stratomancer, and the box in front of him jumped up to intercept it. It opened up and sucked in the fireball, then sucked both Lore and Stratomancer into it. Guldamir cackled in the distance.
Too easy, Pendragon.
He called from across the gorge.
Hold on! We'll get you out of there!
Kimber said, but as she tried to move to help, Silas threw a knife at her. She narrowly avoided it by stopping in her tracks.
You won't be escaping me this time, girl.
Aelin, remember what your Aikitai training has taught you.
Aelin nodded his head, and they both took the Aikitai fighting stance. Haran chuckled as he swung a light arm holding his shoulder.
You know, your brother looked at me the same way before I made him take a swim. Just a shame I didn't get a taste of your mother before I held her under.
Aelin's heart caught fire, and his fear was replaced by fury. Charon pointed at Den. Den squared up and faced him. Then he sunk a ceremonial knife into his forearm and moaned a throaty cry as if he was enjoying it. He extended the arm out towards Den and twisted the knife. Black miasma rose around Den, and he grabbed his arm, crying out in pain.
What in the abyssal hell is this?
Den said as Charon twisted the knife again. Den cried out, dropping to his knees.
That knife. It has the power to make others feel his pain.
Aelin couldn't hold back his rage any longer and charged at Haram. Haram threw a meaty left hook at him, but Aelin slid right underneath it, taking Haram's dead side. Haram tried to turn to throw another strike, but Aelin moved with him, perfectly mimicking his training with the water flumes, staying at his back. Haram kicked behind him, but Aelin moved, then lifted the leg onto his shoulder and ran with it, overextending it. Haram groaned as his legs split. Aelin jumped up and pulled Haram's shoulder back. The big man fell back and Aelin moved out to the side as he fell to the ground. Kandar slammed his fists together, extending one arm toward Petricus. Fire flickered to life in his palm.
Yes!
Camdar shouted as the fireball took shape for the first time. He launched it at Petricus, who raised his shield up to his head. The fireball slammed into the shield but was deflected over the top. Petricus moved to one side and struck at Camdar with his spear. Camdar stumbled backward, avoiding the first strike, but fell. He clasped his wrist behind his back as Petricus followed up, pointing the spear at Camdar's throat.
Weakling!
Petricus said as he attempted to stick him. Camdar laid flat and brought his hand out from behind his back. Another fireball ready to go. He let it go at point-blank range. Petricus put his shield on the ground and tried to hide behind it. The flame exploded around him. Then, as soon as the flame subsided, he looked over the top of the shield to find Camdar fading from sight. He tried to stab at him, but hit nothing but air. Law found himself in a parlor, a chessboard in front of him, Stratomancer on the other side of the board. All seemed perfectly normal, even peaceful. What's going on here? Where am I?
Well, hello, Master Pendragon. Welcome to the tournament. The game is chess. The rules are simple. Take your opponent's king to win the game. Should you win, you will be able to leave. Should you lose, you'll be stuck in this box forever. Shall we begin?
Stratomancer said, holding a hand out toward the board with a wry smile. Law slammed his fists together, but nothing happened.
I'm afraid chaos magic doesn't really exist here. It's more of a realm of my own creation. You see, rather than my cohorts outside I abhor violence, I prefer games of wit.
Law got up and tried to punch Stratomancer, but his arm turned into a fluffy, wet noodle and just slapped him slightly.
Well, that was, mildly unpleasant. Why did you slap me?
Stratomancer said, looking amused. I like percussion, Law grumbled, sitting down on the chair in front of the board.
The only way you're leaving is if you beat me in a game. Mind you, I've never lost. I'll even be so gracious as to give you the first move.
Stratomancer smiled wickedly. Law sat with a grumpy expression and pondered his next move. Kimber looked at Silas, knowing that she was outmatched.
Get him!
She said to someone over to the left. Silas turned to look, and Kimber ran. Silas sighed at falling for such an obvious dupe and chased after her.
Why do they always run?
Silas said, frustrated. He threw two knives and they rebounded off the stone wall next to her as Kimber ducked into the caves at the back of the temple. He rushed in pursuit of her, but slowed down as he got into the narrow corridor of the cave.
Shit!
Silas shouted, leaping back around the cave entrance as fire ripped past.
Clever.
Silas ducked back through the door, looking into rooms and down a hallway but couldn't see her. Then he remembered her veil trick from the last time they met, and he grabbed a lantern from the wall and threw it toward the entrance. It struck true, striking her shoulder. She screamed and fell to the floor, dropping the veil.
Afraid that's not gonna work this time,
he said as he got close to her. Kimber slammed her fists together and extended an arm. Silas tried to advance on her, but she fired a torrent of flames toward him and forced him back deeper into the caves. Den got to his feet and ran at Charon. The hooded creature smiled devilishly as he twisted the knife in his arm. Den took the pain as he opened the wound further. As Den got closer, however, Charon pulled the knife from his arm and sunk it into his own leg. Den fell down right near Charon in agony. Charon removed the dagger and tried to finish Den with it, but Den caught Charon's arm at the elbow and put him into an armbar. Charon flicked the blade into his own wrist, and Den flinched with the pain, losing his grip. Charon chuckled quietly, blood running down his arms. Den felt exhaustion taking over as the blood drained from the both of them. Charon extended his arm straight and sliced a big cut down his arm slowly. Den screamed in agony, not knowing what to do. He thought about his Aikitai training. It never prepared him for an inescapable situation like this. If he couldn't hurt or detain his foe, Then there was only one thing left he could do. Den sprinted toward the skinny, gaunt figure of Charon. Charon felt a pressure on him like he's in the path of a hurricane as Den ran in and picked him up onto his shoulder. Charon stabbed Den in the back again and again with the long ceremonial knife as Den stumbled to the edge of the gorge. With his last step, he threw Charon off the edge. Charon cackled and looked Den in the eye as he fell. He smiled as he plunged the knife into his own heart. Den's eyes glazed over, and his face slumped.
Oh, no.
Den clutched at his chest, then fell to his knees by the cliff face. Harim got to his feet, furious. He ran at Aelin. Aelin remembered his father's fight with Harim in the tavern, and he curled himself into a ball, ducking down beneath Harim's feet. The big man tripped over Aelin and fell toward a waterfall at the edge of the temple, teetering on the edge. Aelin leaped to his feet and sprinted at Harim, delivering a jumping sidekick to his back. Harim growled as he fell from the ledge and splashed into the shallow water below, landing on river stones with a loud crack. Harim was hurt. He curled into a ball and coughed up blood, grabbing at his side. Aelin looked over to see Den throw Charon off the cliff face. Wounds covered his back. He saw Den clutch at his chest, then fall to the ground.
Den!
Aelin shouted as he rushed to help him. Petricus had no idea where Camdar went. He searched around, stabbing at the air.
Come fight me, coward!
Suddenly, out of nowhere, a fireball struck him in the back. Petricus exploded into pieces, and there stood Camdar, palm smoking.
Rot in hell, corpse,
Camdar said, turning from the smoldering pieces of Petricus. Camdar walked away, unwary as a black goo formed out of the pieces that used to be Petricus, and grabbed at one another, slowly pulling themselves back together.
How?
Stratomancer cried, looking at the chessboard.
How could I be defeated?
Well, you challenged a 500-year-old wizard to a battle of wits, Lord taunted, as he moved his final piece.
No!
Stratomancer cried as Lord got sucked back out of the box. He reappeared next to the box and looked down at it. You were a worthy adversary. In all my years, I've never seen someone use a strategy quite like that, he said to the box as he picked it up. He placed a hand on his elbow and summoned a gout of fire. The box caught and burned to ashes. Farewell, Stratomancer, Lor said, looking directly at Guldamir, who sat on the other side of the gorge, watching intently. Silas was stuck in the caves. Kimber was guarding the entrance, filling the corridor with fire whenever he showed his face. He made his way upwards and found a small room with a window. He kicked it out, then dropped down to see Kimber hiding behind a wall, occasionally looking in to make sure Silas remained inside. Kimber knew she couldn't keep the fire up forever, and was already feeling depleted as she took another peek inside. But a knife appeared at her throat from behind.
Get up slowly and put those nasty hands behind your back.
Kimber did as he said. Silas tied her hands with a tourniquet and told her to turn around.
Pretty little thing you are. Shame you wound up with this lot.
I think you'll find you're the one on the wrong side,
Kimber said, looking over his shoulder.
Fool me once, girl,
Silas began to say until he heard Camdar approaching behind. No sooner had he heard, a massive gust of wind hit him from the side and sent him bouncing across the stone and rolling over the ledge. Camdar dropped his veil, and Kimber jumped into his arms.
Thank you, Daddy. Thank you.
It's all right. You're safe now. Quickly turn around and we'll get those restraints off you.
He removed the tourniquet, and as Kimber turned to face him, her expression turned into one of shock and panic. Blood spilled from Camdar's mouth. Petricus had reformed himself and stuck his spear through Camdar's stomach. Kimber screamed as Camdar's blood splattered across her face.
Did you really think it would be that easy to destroy the field commander of the Vanguard?
Camdar fell to his knees, blood running down from his mouth. Petricus pulled the spear from Camdar's body and let him fall. Kimber shook uncontrollably as he tried to form a seal with her fists. Shock paralyzed her and she couldn't make her hands work properly. Petricus advanced forward, shield and spear in hand. Kimber tried to backstep but tripped and fell down as Petricus raised his spear to strike. In an instant, Petricus was blown into 1,000 pieces for a second time, and Kimber was covered in bits of Petricus. Kimber wiped the blood and tears from her eyes with shaking hands as Law came into view. He helped her to her feet and took her on his shoulder. "I'm sorry, my girl. There's nothing we can do." Kimber let out a wail of grief and tears and fought against him. Law knew they were fighting a losing battle and remembered Den saying something earlier about the caves having a back entrance. "I'm sorry, my dear, but I cannot let this power fall into Guldamir's hands. We'll sneak out the back while they're distracted," he said, turning into the caves. Aelin knelt down next to Den. Sadness covered his face.
I'm sorry, Master. This was all my fault. I should never have brought them here.
It's all right, Aelin. Sometimes we lose the way. The most important thing is that we take the correct path, the path of the Aikitai. Promise me, you won't let our way end here. That you'll teach the path to others and show them how to live in harmony as we did.
I will, Master.
Aelin replied tearfully.
Then we'll train again someday in the lands beyond.
Den smiled as his head lolled in Aelin's arms. Aelin felt his heart break again, just as it did when his family passed years ago. Tears blurred his eyes. No sooner had he opened them, he was blindsided by Haram's gigantic boot. Den fell from the cliff, and Aelin narrowly held on by grabbing the ledge with one hand. Haram was bleeding from a wound on his head and was holding his side where his ribs were visibly broken. Aelin was dazed from the attack, but managed to pull himself up. No sooner had he found his feet, Haram grabbed him by the face and lifted him with one arm, just as he did when they first met in the living forest.
"This time your mummy isn't around to catch you,"
Haram said as he threw Aelin from the cliff face. Aelin remembered the falling technique Den had showed him as the ground rushed to meet him. He landed flat on his side with his arm extended out, protecting his head on the stony path below. Aelin hit the ground hard, knocking the wind from him, but managed not to break anything. He groaned and rolled to the side, slowly finding his feet. Haram jumped down using one meaty hand to tear down the face of the cliff, landing firmly on his huge muscular legs. Aelin scrambled to his feet, but Haram punched Aelin so hard he flew backward through the air and through a wall of vines under and overhang. He landed with a splash into a pool of water. Blood trickled from cuts on his face. Aelin moaned and raised an arm to find his side had gone purple with bruising. It was hard to breathe. He looked into the water. His face was swelling up from where Haram had just hit him. Haram ripped the vines out of his way and stepped into the overhang.
"Well, ain't this perfect?"
he said with a wicked smile.
"You can go the same way as the rest of your family."
Haram walked over to him. Aelin tried to swim away, but Haram grabbed his foot and pulled him back. Haram lifted Aelin by the hair and dragged him out to the middle of the pool. He pushed Aelin's head under the water and held him there. Aelin struggled and tried to move, but Haram was strong, too strong. His iron grip felt like a bear trap had grabbed his skull. Aelin felt himself losing consciousness. Then he stopped struggling.
I'm sorry, Mother, Brother, Father. I couldn't avenge you.
He thought as visions of his family welcoming him home crossed his mind. Aelin felt a bright white light in front of his eyes.
Aelin.
Asta's voice called again.
Mother?
Still think on your mother, huh?
The wisp responded.
An unspeakable evil is corrupting the world. I can't stop them. But if you make a bargain with me, I can give you power.
I will do whatever it takes, and I'll destroy Goldemir if it's the last thing I do.
Good. Then here's the bargain. Find the 5 shards of power and use them to seal the abyss once again.
As you wish.
The pool glowed with a white light. When Harrim finally licked off Aelin's lifeless body, he panicked and stumbled out of the pool. Aelin began to rise. The white light drew into him and increased in brightness. Harrim shielded his eyes until the light faded. Aelin stood before him, illuminated. Harrim couldn't believe his eyes. He grunted and moved to grab Aelin again, but Aelin placed a hand on his chest and used Aethor's close-range punching technique. He hit Harrim so hard he bounced off the stone wall, cracking the stone and landing on the floor face down. The overhang shook from the blow, and the crack began to run up the wall. Aelin walked out from behind the vines. He drew back and punched the stone cliff with such force that a larger crack appeared along it. The overhang broke off. Harrim got up and ran to the pool as the overhang began to come down. The stone above him broke loose from the cliff face coming down over him. Harrim put his hands up to stop it, but even his might couldn't hold the tremendous weight of stone. Harrim cried out a throaty growl as the overhang slowly pushed him down into the pool. Aelin listened vengefully as he heard Harrim choke in his watery grave. The light faded from him. He slumped exhausted and nursing his wounds.
Besting Harrim Halfbone is no easy feat. You certainly are impressive for one so young,
Salas said behind him. Aelin tried to turn, but Salas struck him hard on the back of the head with the hilt of his blade. Then everything went black.